Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 2nd, 2019 Informal County Commission meeting. We have no one to address the commission tonight. We'll call the meeting to order. We have two presentations this evening. Our first one is from our Director of Schools, Mr. Millard House. Mr. House, good evening. Happy belated Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the last time since I've had a chance to address the commission, I now have glasses. So that ought to tell you how things are going on my end. Absolutely. But again, thank you all for the opportunity to share with you this evening. As you may know, CMCSS was informed approximately about a month ago that there was interest by a few commissioners to reacquire the land in question. At that time, I expressed my desire to share our overall needs to the commission, construction plans, as well as our expected growth. With that said, over the next 5-10 minutes, we'd like to do just that. Please know that the district is not married to any one piece of land. Our hope is to simply be prepared for what's to come and not be caught in a similar situation that we're enduring currently. If that means keep the land in question or instead immediately move forward with searching for an alternative land purchase that aligns with our construction and growth plan, that would be fine as well. At this time, I'm going to invite Norm Brumley and Jim Summerall to the microphone to share our construction and growth needs for the next few minutes.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to just spend a few minutes to you talking about student growth and some of the facts that we know and some of the projections that we make and our process for making them, and then also some of the forecast or projections that the Regional Planning Commission has made. There must be some animation here. So let me start with the blue line, if you will. Each of the squares on the blue line indicate the actual student enrollment number that CMCSS reported to the Department of Education in Nashville on the corresponding year. And so as you can see, starting in 1980, which is all the way to the left, there were 14,376 students enrolled in the Clarksville, Montgomery County school system. And you can see that the district remained kind of flat until 1985, at which time the enrollment was 14,036. And then whatever it was that happened in 1985 began a growth trend in student population that has yet to cease. And so if you look at those numbers, again, each one of the squares indicates the 40th day enrollment of the corresponding year. So we went from 14,000 up to the current, this year's 40th number, which was over 36,000 students. And so if you just do the math and let the data tell the story, if you go back from 1985, when the growth trend began, through the current, it's 34 years, and the annual average enrollment growth was 661 students every year, year after year, for those 34 years. If you look at the last 10 years, 694 students per year, every year for the last 10 years. The last 5 years, 885. And then this year, compared to last year's 40th day enrollment growth, we were up by 1,152 students. During that time, from 1985 to 2019, we have over $392 million worth of school construction, with some $360 million of that taking place in the 15 years that are indicated right there. So just in those, so in those 15 years, some $360 million worth of construction. So all of those are facts. Those are known. That's what has happened in the district. And then if we look to the right of the projection there, you can see two lines. And so what those two lines tell us, the bottom line that is more dashed blue in color would be if we took the data that we have developed over the 34 years indicated, and we just projected that data out into the future by simply adding 661 students to the previous year's total, then 20 years from now, according to CMCSS estimates, the district would be at 48,847 students. That's using the factual data that we have developed over 34 years. The green line is the projection, and Jeff Tyndall, I'm sorry. Jeff is going to make a detailed presentation, but in that presentation, he will capture that number that we have borrowed from him, that over the next 20 years, the district will grow by some 15,648 students, or 782 students per year. So you can pick your poison. It's all forecasting. Both of them are very reasonable, but nothing in the data that we have developed or that Jeff will present here this evening would cause us to believe that we wouldn't continue to expect growth in Montgomery County and growth in the number of public school students that we have to have facilities for. So I'm going to be followed here by Norm, who will provide a detailed construction report over the next 20 years, and his estimates will be based on the CMCSS projections indicated there in the blue.
Thank you. Good evening. This is our construction timeline through 2040. This matches with the Regional Planning Commission's 20-year growth plan, which you'll hear more about in a moment. Our current resolution program is designed to meet our overcrowding and recent growth, and it represents only 14% of this big picture. We're looking at over $433 million over the next 20 years to meet that 15,000 additional student capacity forecast by the Regional Planning Commission. So let's look at that. How will we get there? Between 2019 and 2022, we're looking at an elementary school addition at Rossview, an adult education center at the New Providence Elementary site, a language immersion center at the Emmanuel Baptist Church Family Life Center, an elementary school addition at West Creek Elementary School, an elementary school addition at Oakland Elementary School, and a new middle school in Region 1 and 2 that we're discussing land acquisition for right now. That increases our student capacity about 2,100 students. From 2023 to 2026, we're looking at a new high school in Regions 1 and 2, an elementary school addition, possibly at Carmel Elementary, an elementary school addition in Region 1, a new elementary school in Regions 1 or 2, an elementary school addition in Region 1, and a middle school addition in Region 5. That increases our student capacity by another 3,300 seats. Between 2027 and 2030, we're looking at an elementary school addition possibly in the northeast area, a renovation of New Providence Middle School, a new elementary school in Regions 1 and 2, a middle school addition in Region 2, an elementary school addition possibly in the Sango area. This increases our student capacity by another 1,600 seats. Between 2031 and 2034, we're looking at a new elementary school in Region 2, a new elementary school in Region 3, an elementary school addition in Regions 1 and 2, a new middle school in Regions 1 and 2, a high school in Region 1 and 2. This increases our student capacity by another 4,800 students. Between 2035 and 2040, we're looking at a middle school addition in Region 2, a new elementary school in Region 1, a new elementary school in Region 5, an elementary school addition in Region 2, and possibly a middle school addition in Region 5. This increases our student capacity by another 2,200 students. This building plan requires 250 to 300 acres of land that is not currently held by CMCSS. The Kirkwood campus is included in this land plan as the land is currently held by the district. The location is well suited to meet expected growth in that region. There are currently over 6,000 approved residential lots in Montgomery County, and over 3,000 of those lots are in Regions 1 and 2. And the 20-year growth plan that you are about to hear about will soon expand the urban growth boundary deeper into that area of Region 1 and 2. The timeline of this development also coincides with the capping of the Bi-County construction landfill. Last week I discussed this with Mr. Neblett of Bi-County, and he has confirmed that there are just over 11 years of capacity left in that landfill. So holding Kirkwood also reduces the future burden for land acquisition by this body, as we are very likely to still need land in that region over the next 20 years. So this concludes my construction outlook, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, I appreciate the information. From what I'm looking at, for the next 20 years, you have to buy land in order to expand, and I understand the growth, and the growth projections seemed about par. That was, to me, it seemed pretty much on point. But as far as land goes, are you going to continue to use the same architectural plans that you've been using for the last 30 years in schools? Because it's getting to the point where land is finite in Montgomery County. And if we're going to have the type of growth that we're having and the projected growth that you guys have just said, then it's going to get to the point where available land is not going to be. So either we're going to have to change the architectural plans to make building schools a lot more fluid and not campus-based, or we're just going to run out of land.
So the plans that are in place right now, there's a savings every time that we build a school again. And so the best example is Minglewood Elementary. That floor plan was built 8 times, and we saved roughly $500,000 every time we reused that plan. And so all of the forecasting that has been done right now is based on an elementary school that is expandable to 1,100 students, a middle school that is a 2-story design that's expandable to 1,500, and a high school that's expandable to 2,000 students. The conversation, I understand your point, and we're not prepared to show it tonight. We have in the past, that all of the architectural and engineering logic would say that it is so much cheaper to build on one level, that if the cost of the land, so New York City is a great example. The cost of land in New York City is off the charts, and so they have no choice but to build up. And we don't find ourselves in that position right now, so it would continue to be economically more advisable to build on one level, or where we've already designed a middle school to be on 2 levels.
As far as high schools go, and according to this, in the next 20 years, there are going to be a lot of tweaks to those plans because as technology increases, construction becomes, changes, materials change, you'll have to do different tweaks. And you might just want to look at, besides just building elementary schools, which I understand as one story, and that's logical, but for high schools, which, because if we're growing at the rate we're growing now, high schools are really going to be in demand, middle and high schools. Then I know you said you had a multi-story in as far as middle goes, but I think that high schools need to be multi-story
Yeah,
as well.
we're certainly not opposed to that in the future. All of the funding plans and formulas that have been provided to this body are based on the 3 schools that I told you. In the future, we would certainly be open to that debate.
Okay, thanks for the good job.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick question. I appreciate the population count, which we've seen, I think, numerous times, as well as the resolutions that we've seen multiple times. There wasn't any mention of rezoning, which I have asked numerous times. I don't see any estimation of that. I find it pretty odd that we were asked as a commission to fund building projects without any consideration for rezoning. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I can. So we consider rezoning every year after the 40th day when we develop those numbers. And the situation that we find ourselves in right now is that while there is capacity at Kenwood High School, Kenwood Middle School is at capacity. And so if we rezone to put high school kids into Kenwood High School, their younger siblings are going to go into a school that's, because all those schools are aligned. So once you get into the 6th grade, you stay with your classmates through graduation. So if the middle school is at capacity and you pick a neighborhood of children and say, now you're going to go to the high school, their younger siblings are going to go to that same middle school, and that's going to put that school over capacity. So we do consider rezoning, and we have rezoned thousands of children over the years.
That would seem to me to be a fundamental flaw in the concept of having multiple schools on one location. You just told me it's flawed.
No, I didn't.
Because it inhibits your ability to rezone. Isn't that what you said?
It doesn't inhibit our ability to rezone, but it does when the smaller classes are larger than the big classes. So right now, there is an imbalance, but those buildings are aligned 1 to 3 grade levels in a middle school of 400 students each, and 4 grade levels of 400 students each at the high school.
I understand what you're saying. Well, what I'll tell you, I'll give you a little illustration on our automobile industry, okay? Consumers have spoken about automobiles, and they said, we no longer want sedans. We'd rather have SUVs and trucks. But every time we talk, it seems like we get the same speech, which is, we're going to use the same plan over and over again. You're going to have a car whether you like it or not. I think we on the commission have spoken numerous times and have stated that we would like multi-level schools, and we're not also chained to the idea of having multiple schools in one location, because that's just not going to be a possibility for us as we have our growth, being able to put 3 campuses at the same location. It seems to me, I know out in the Sango area, if you can find 150 acres in Sango that someone's going to sell to you, you're going to be a very good salesman, because it doesn't exist right now. And there is nothing out in Sango right now that is purchased. So,
Again, Commissioner, all I would say is that all of the numbers that have been provided by CMCSS for the funding of these projects is based on using the current buildings. And when all of this conversation took place, we said, we can certainly do that. We can go hire an architect for $1 million or more to design a multi-story building, but it's not going to match the numbers that we've provided. It's going to be more expensive. And so where we find ourselves right now is that, so the high school has been built 3 times. And it's a high functioning, we're very happy with the design of that high school. But if the decision is made to change that now, we can go hire an architect to design a multi-story high school. It's going to cost more than the numbers that have been shared with this commission. Nobody's not listening to you. I'm just trying to say that this is a functional design. It's working very well for our children, and there are some savings for using it again. The plan that is developed now expands it to 2,000, which was the desire of this body, to make the high schools 2,000 students, and we have done that.
The discussion kind of falls when we build a new school location. The first year that we have a location, we're putting portables up in the first blessed year. I mean, so
Well, that's maybe because we asked for the building 3 years prior and didn't get it.
When's the last time we rezoned as a system? A system-wide rezone, what year?
We've never, not in the 16 years I've been here, we spot rezone. One of the board's limitations is to move as few children as possible. It's not good for a child's education for them to be changing schools every year. And so we try to avoid that. We also are burdened with the fact that a family that moves here with children buys the house that they buy because they want their children to go to the school it's going to. And for us to come in every year and change that is not what our public expects from their school system.
But you just said you haven't done a system-wide rezone in 16 years.
One of the plans, Commissioner Harper, to move forward with the new campus that we're working on with the Land Acquisition Committee is to do a major rezoning. That was the same plan last year when things didn't come to fruition with Kirkwood. The plan was to, once we open that school, all bets off across the county, informing parents at least a year ahead of time that there will be a major rezoning. So that is to come. But you do it in conjunction with a major bill like this campus is coming. And the other thing that I want to just kind of want to make a point in and around is that you're absolutely right in terms of it being very difficult to find, large bodies of land. And Sango and
It is.
Kirkwood, we actually look for anywhere between 90 and 105 acres to build a 3-school campus on. We also, from the standpoint of the information that you see on the screen, there are standalone schools. The next middle school that we are moving is a dual level school, 2-level school, much like West Creek Middle School. So that is the plan for our next middle school that we're currently working on, is to duplicate West Creek Middle School, which is a 2-level school.
And my purpose with the question is not to bash you. I appreciate you being here tonight. That's not the purpose of it. But one of the speakers earlier mentioned about Kirkwood. We already decided quite some time ago about Kirkwood. We made a decision on that we weren't going to fund that for a school campus. And to have the discussion that you're still considering it, maybe our rhetoric is not reaching each other. Maybe we're not communicating, because we made that decision quite some time ago.
Go ahead, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Well, I think just in fairness to the conversation, and Commissioner Harper, and I'm not going to prevent Commissioner Knight or Commissioner Joe Smith from speaking, and I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
Your line of questioning, I'm not a judge, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand what Mr. Summerall and Mr. House is saying, and I think really the issue here tonight was to allow the school system to just show the commission what they're going to need in the next to 2040. And you can see all these arrows that show land. And so I think the school system is just saying, we're going to need land. And everybody's now we're wanting to talk about 2-story and multi-story and individual campuses and this and that. Regardless of where they go, they're going to need land. And so I think for this body, if this body determines that we've already voted on once at the Kirkwood site, that we'd like to have it back, how we dispose of it, we may keep it, don't know what we'll do with it. But I think that's really the issue at hand. Commissioner Knight.
I have a couple questions. One, are you looking to keep the Kirkwood complex in order to utilize it for the development and growth of the school system?
That was a part of the plan, was to look at it in the future once that site is capped with the construction demolition site that's currently sitting on it, and once it's capped, look at it as a possible campus.
Well,
Let me just, if I could, so you can see they're lightly shaded there. That's if we don't have Kirkwood. We're just going to buy 3 more parcels, or that's all we're doing here. It doesn't, as the director said as he opened, it doesn't have to be Kirkwood. But Kirkwood is a viable campus, in our opinion, and it fits into the future needs. But it doesn't have to be Kirkwood, but we're trying to show you that we need land right in that area. And it'll be difficult. It's just 3 more purchases that we're going to have to make if we don't use Kirkwood.
I think given time for that particular location, that the Kirkwood would probably be good. I know we voted on it previously in the past, but, you know, given that time and that process and looking out to 2040 and the whole 9, and, you know, utilization of land is going to be important for, you know, placement of schools, you know, for our children. I did have, I'm probably going to beat you up about as much as Commissioner Pritchard and the other commissioners have, but I think that we definitively should look into, you know, structurally and architecturally at how we build schools currently. Because, I mean, you say it's going to cost more to build a larger multi-dual level school, but looking at it mathematically, looking at it logically, in the long run, it'll save us money. It'll save the county money. It'll save the school system money if we build a larger style middle school or elementary school, and definitely high school, so that they don't come to capacity within the 3 to 5 year time frame that they usually do. My kids go to West Creek, right? My kids had to be in a portable. So I know the capacity of West Creek Elementary. I know for a fact, right? And I have 6 kids in the school system. And I'm here to tell you right now that it's better to change your architectural design, and it'll cost less in the long run. Over the course of 8 years, we're going to be saving, what, $45 million to build a school based off of the architectural designs that you have currently, versus 75 or 100 million for a larger base dual level school. Am I wrong?
I would tend to disagree, and I think if you'll recall in a presentation I made here in February, assuming that an acre of land costs $45,000, and that's 1/3 of a high school. A high school covers 3 acres. So you buy a $45,000 acre, a $45,000 acre, and so you have 3 acres that you've purchased. You cannot add a second floor to a commercial building for $45,000. And you can't add the 3rd one on top of that. So it's going to cost more to build it. I'm not going to debate whether or not it's the right thing to do. We're just recommending the plan that we got approved in this body, and it's a high school that's working well for us, and this design that has been submitted is expandable to 2,000 students. And again, I don't want to debate. I'd be happy to meet and just show you the facts that we have from the engineers that tell us. You know, we even talked about having a 2-story design and a single-story design and putting it out to bid, but that cost a lot of money to do that. But I don't know how to convince you that we're trying to be the most economic.
I get it, but I'll tell you this. Get rid of the single-story design, and I will approve anything on my end that you have going on.
Appreciate it.
The other thing, to answer the second part of your question in reference to, you talked about multi-level as well as larger schools as a whole. as an instructional leader in high-performing institutions, as a principal in two very high-performing elementary schools, one middle school as well. What I do know is that, larger is not necessarily better for children. What I know as a principal is that, if I'm able to set an instructional plan for a building and have classroom sizes, have a school size that I can manage, I can have a school that performs, in my opinion, at a stronger level. And that is something that has happened in Montgomery County over the course of time. We've performed very, very well. When you get into some of the supersized buildings, I mean, we have elementary schools that are 800 to, close to 1,100 kids. And that's large for an elementary school anywhere you go. The middle school that I worked at in New York, in the South Bronx, was smaller than that. And so it's very interesting. So I think that's something from the educator side that we have to understand as well.
And I've heard that argument, but I would have to disagree because here's why. Smaller size school, yeah, I get the community atmosphere and the whole nine, but if it's overcrowded, what are you providing to the kids? Absolutely the same deal as
But
if
the
you had a larger
overcrowding is
school.
what we're talking about here today.
Exactly.
This will help us.
So you want a small community atmosphere type school, right? Where it's a smaller school.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the school sizes that we're talking about, is there a particular size that you're throwing out?
Dual, West Creek Elementary, West Creek Middle School, excuse me. That's a good size, multi-level.
I mean, number of students that you're talking about.
Something that'll house about 15, maybe 2,000 kids.
That's not smart from an educational standpoint for children when you're talking about in a middle school. It can be done, but I don't believe that we'll see the kind of performance that we've seen in our middle schools. As an educator for 25 years, you can disagree with me. My opinion may not matter from that perspective. It's just one thing that I believe in running schools.
Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Commissioner Joe Smith.
All right. I'll try not to hit on all the topics they hit on. Norm, I sent you a study done, I believe it was as recent as 2015, about the advantages of building up versus out. Somebody who's been in construction, when we were at the Growth Plan Committee meeting, I sent you an email.
I did not receive that.
Commissioner Smith, if you would pull that microphone to you a little bit.
I'll send it to you again, just to make sure I got it right.
I'd be curious to read it.
There are advantages to building up. I know we're not here to talk about that tonight, but I do think that the school system and the county commissioners need to sit down and have a powwow at some point, because there's a lot of underlying issues that a lot of us commissioners grunt and moan about when it comes to the school system, all right? It's one of those things. Y'all are one of our biggest budget items. While y'all do have your own elected officials to help you guys run things, we're the ones who write the check. And what that comes down to is we're trying to protect our taxpayer dollars. We are one of only a handful of counties in Tennessee who builds campus-style platforms. A handful. And that makes no sense, because what does the campus style do? Yeah, it creates a great atmosphere for a kid to feel like they're a part of the Hawks or whatever other school there is that they grew up through that their whole way, all the way through Rossview, all the way through Richview and Clarksville High. Great camaraderie. I get that. But what else does it cause? A lot of land to be purchased at one time, a lot of traffic, a stupid amount of traffic. Every single one of those campus locations, traffic is backed up on either end in every direction all the way around them. I think the only one that truly functions well is West Creek, because it's 2,000 feet off the road and has a long entrance. Those are little things that we have to address before I'll ever approve anything for a campus, ever. I can understand wanting it, but wanting and needing are two different things. We need schools. We need small site schools for our elementary. Just we have that all over with our elementaries, right? Those kids don't have camaraderie. They're bouncing around all over the place. They don't stay with their little brother or big brother as they go to middle school. Does it make it hard on mom? Yeah, but that's normal. Or dad, whoever drops them off to school, okay? We can do the same thing with the middle schools, smaller site schools. I'm gonna tell you a perfect location. Right now in my district, they approved 700 and some odd houses in Hereford Farms. There's two big commercial lots right in the front. One side could be an elementary, one side could be a middle school. And then you got all those kids who could walk to the school instead of having parents drive and congest roads every morning at 7 o'clock. I'm an old school boy. Let's think outside of the box and not try to fit everything into a design plan. Because we talk about the savings that we get from using the same design over and over. Well, guess what? We spend that savings every time because we have to add on a wing. So we saved $500,000. We just spent it when we added the wing on 3 years later. Why? Because we didn't plan ahead and think, oh, we know we're growing 600 to 800 students a year, 1,000 students a year this year. Why are we not planning for that? As Commissioner Harper said, we open a school, we have a portable on it within 2 years, guaranteed. A portable. I don't think a school has been built here since 2000 that I know of that as it opened within 2 to 3 years did not have a portable in it as an elementary school. And that's crazy.
I think it was actually 2014 was the last one we built.
I'm saying since 2000.
Carmel, Pisgah,
Carmel doesn't have one, but you just talked about an expansion on it already.
well, it'll get there.
10 years.
10 years.
Okay? Carmel, what's the other one? Yeah, Carmel's empty because it's out in the outskirts of my area, I know.
Pisgah lasted several years before. I mean, we're just growing fast.
Yeah, and I can appreciate, Commissioner Smith, everything that you just said. And speaking from experience, as I sat in the same seat as Chief Operating Officer in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system, which had a very similar growth trend that we're seeing here. We didn't have the campus approach. We were building 3 schools a year annually. We were dealing with the same traffic. Where there were 130 schools at the time, over 900 portables that we were dealing with at that time. We're just in a situation where, because of the economy, because of jobs, Montgomery County in Middle Tennessee is hot right now. And that's just had an overload on what happens in several different pieces, from transportation to schools. That's what happens in very, very fast-growing communities. And again, we didn't have the campus approach in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we were in worse condition than we are in Montgomery County. Every time we built a school, 3 to 4 of them a year, we were filling them up as well. And so it's a difficult scenario, but I think that's a part of what the Land Acquisition Committee is all about. At that time, if it's thrown out that we look at multi-levels, then we look at them. We hash those conversations out. And I tell you what, this process that the mayor has been leading has been a process where everybody's been open-minded, everybody's listening, and we're making progress in the right direction. So that's what I would hope that will continue to happen moving forward as well.
And I appreciate all the effort that goes into projecting this stuff. But as your diagram showed, our growth has been steady since 1985. 600 to 1,000 students a year. Rock and roll. It's on a straight incline. You know it's happening. I appreciate y'all coming up with a plan. We haven't had that, really. We've just, hey, we need this, and then the county commission's like, okay, we'll find the dollars, here we go, and we do it. But we have growth in different areas and in different levels, different stages right now, all over this county. My district, Ross View's area, south of the river. South of the river's gonna need a school real quick if it keeps going the way it is. There's houses popping up everywhere out there on little lots. I just want to see us get away from this campus-style atmosphere. It's a great want, but I don't think it's a necessity, not here in Montgomery County.
Commissioner Gannon?
Thank you, Mayor. And I do, Joe, on one thing too, there is like a 5-year plan that we've worked on many times in the different school meetings and stuff like that on where they want to grow and what they want to do and stuff like that. My only question is a point of information, Mayor. It's been said twice already, it's once here and once at our last land acquisition meeting, that 3 years ago we denied building a school. Has there been any resolutions for any schools or anything that other than Kirkwood that we've denied, that we told them that we wouldn't build a school?
Not that I'm aware of that's been before this body, no.
Do you have any resolutions that you know of that you said?
The first part of the process in terms of is an informal process, which is coming to have a conversation with the mayor about our needs. And from there, if a resolution is developed beyond that process, it's developed.
Okay, so
but
the mayor, did the mayor?
Can I finish my point? And then I'll let you finish your point. But we've done that annually since I've been around, and it's my understanding in conversation with the previous director as well. Actually, the previous two directors I've had conversations with, Sandy Husk as well as BJ Worthington, that's happened annually. And so, yes, the informal has happened. I think you're specifically talking about a resolution, but we never got to a resolution. We started with the informal and brought those needs, brought those recommendations, didn't land on a resolution. But just because we didn't land on a resolution didn't mean we didn't bring the information and start the informal process as our process lays out.
Then let me rephrase the question. Mayor, in the last 3 years, have you denied when this process started them not wanting to build a school?
No, I don't think we have. I think we've had discussions and we've asked, hey, could you move this back a year, or could you do this or that? And it's all been
Exactly.
part of a working process, in my opinion.
That's the way I remember it. Thank you.
Commissioner Woodruff.
Thank you, Mayor. I just got a comment and then a question. I don't know the challenge. I don't know how we're going to be able to fix the school's population just based on growth. If we build it 4 stories in 8 years, it's overcrowded. We got to put out partials out, even versus our campus. So that's a challenge. I got it. But that's not my question. My question is, I can't see those numbers up there on the left-hand side. How many schools are we talking about in the next 20 years? Can you just give me a number of those? Because I was trying to follow you and count those. Can you give me that? Just the numbers of how many schools we're looking at, the projection.
I believe it's 11 elementary, 2 middle,
Well,
and
okay.
did we say 1?
Be
2 high
two.
school, 2 middle.
Has to be two
2
high schools, too.
2 high school, 2 middle, 11 elementary.
Let me just put those down. How many? Give me it again. One more time. 11? And how
2
many?
high schools, 2 middles, 11 elementaries.
And then various additions
Okay.
as well.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Beal?
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you guys giving us this information. Very quick question. Can you tell me how many students we are currently over capacity?
Are you talking about a particular school or district-wide?
No, just the whole district. Can you give me a number on how many right now compared to building
There are
capacity?
207 portables in use at 20 students per, so a couple thousand children are in portables every day.
So roughly 4,000 over capacity right now? Okay. And when I look at this, this plan up here, and I'm looking at the numbers, I'm concerned that we're never going to catch up at this point. And the reason why I say that is because if we're currently 4,000 students over capacity, and then our plan through 2022 would give us room for another 2,100 students, that's not counting the 600 to 1,000 that we're going to grow in the next 3 years, right? So our plan through 2022, we're still going to be behind. Our plan from 2023 through 26, we're still going to be behind. From 27 to 30, we're still going to be behind. 2031 to 2034, we might start catching up. But then from 2035 to 2040, we're planning on growing another 3,000 students, but our plan from 35 to 40 is only going to help us with 2,200 of that. So I guess my question is this plan aggressive enough? Are we ever going to get caught up?
You know, so just as an example of just what you're saying, there are currently 9 portables at Rossview, full of kids, and we're adding a 12 classroom addition, and that brings that building to its max. So we'll pick up some capacity there, and every time we do that, we're gonna be getting towards it. But that plan is based on the break-even analysis, right? In each of those regions. So if it all started at the time that is indicated there for construction and completes on time, then we would be keeping up with our growth.
But that's not fixing our current problem, though. Correct? We're always going to be a couple of thousand students behind, it seems
Yeah,
like.
I think we're going to have portables in this district for a long time. We've had them for a long time, and we move them to address where we have problems. So we'll free up portable. We opened a 12 classroom addition at Barker's Mill. There were 13 portables up there. Some of those are available for us to move elsewhere. Some we're leaving there because we just need more capacity up in that region.
Well, I guess here's my question. I feel like we're in a big hole and we are never going to dig ourselves out of it, right? So my question is for example, our plan through 2022 and even going through 2026, we're hoping to alleviate roughly 5,400 students of that. Can we make some tweaks in this plan to maybe increase that number?
I think if you look at making tweaks are instead of building one elementary school, much like we did in Charlotte, we were building 2 or 3. So that would just depend on sitting down, with the mayor, looking at the debt schedule, and that's something that we try to appreciate as well, knowing what's on the table, and not not putting the county in too bad of a situation. But we're open to that, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and say no, but we're open to that. But we also are going to be reasonable in terms of what can be done, and with the means and the funds that are available.
But I would like to see us actually fix the problem at some point. And I sincerely feel like looking at these numbers, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So we're always going to be in this same situation where we're having to figure out, and this is why I agree with what Commissioner Harper said and what Commissioner Smith said. We need to think outside of the box and maybe come up with a different plan here, because obviously it's not working.
I think to fix the problem, it's just more funding and more schools, when it's all said and done. And we're open to sitting down and having those conversations.
I don't think any of us disagree that we need more schools. I think where we disagree is how we do it. So I'm going to use what you guys said, and you had mentioned purchasing something now versus later. It costs more later. Let's fix the problem sooner than later so that we're not spending as much money. That's just how I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fair. One thing I would ask you to consider on that, though, is that we have been, Carmel is a perfect example. We opened Carmel. At the time, Sango had 13 portables, and we provided relief for Sango. And people have been critical of us because that school is still not at capacity. It's in the 80 percentile right now, because you're heating and cooling and lighting a 100,000 square foot commercial building, and it's not full of kids. So we try to blend all of that into the recommendations that develop the timeline you're looking at here.
Commissioner Pritchard?
Thank you. Let me say that I want to congratulate you for thinking outside the box on repurposing other buildings and rearranging a few different educational programs into buildings that had no other prior use. I think that's great. I think Montgomery County has buildings that you can do that, and I appreciate the fact that you've already started that process. And I have one other statement, and I do realize that growth is fluid, and I do know that we're not ever going to catch up as far as growth goes with schools. But I can say this, that in building elementary schools, when Fort Campbell built Barkley, it was projected to be about $45 million. They built Barkley on 4 stories with a roof with grass, a garden up top, solar system, everything state of the art. 45 is a lot. It's a 741 student school, elementary, and I think that's where you want to keep the size of your elementary schools. But I think if the government can build a 4-story ADA compliant school, fairly state of the art, even if we reduce some of the amenities, I think that we can build schools of that nature. So I think there is open conversation for this solution here. Thanks.
Commissioner Gannon?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to ask for some information, the same that I've asked for previously that we've done. Can you give a list of the increase in enrollment I think last time you gave us a list, it started at 1960 or something like that, went back to the 70s or something. But what the student population increased by year, and we had that before, a couple of 3 years ago, you emailed that to everybody. In addition to, can you get us a list of all the schools, what their capacity is, and what their current capacity is, whether they're over or under and stuff like that, with numbers, with the number of students as well. If you could give that, email that to Shelley, and then Shelley can distribute it to all the county commissioners, that would be terrific.
We can do the one, I don't know that we can go back to 1960. We have this
70s, whatever.
1980 is where I think.
You don't have anything before the 80s? If you have anything before the 80s, that would be appreciated. I think we went before the 80s last time, if I'm not mistaken. I can go see if I can dig up some old information, but I believe we did.
It was basically the chart that Jim showed you.
It was chart, but it had all the numbers to it, and then it had some numbers from previous years, too.
Just used the data
Yeah.
that built that chart.
But that data, plus if you had any other data before the 80s as well,
We
would be
have the
terrific.
building capacity, we can send that to, we'll give you the 40.
Yeah, you usually put a picture of that
Yeah,
up there,
we
and stuff
have
like
it.
that. Yeah.
Commissioner Knight?
On top of that, are we, did you mention emailing all these documents and such to us as well? I didn't catch that last part. Okay, yeah, that
Yeah, and
and,
if you're talking about the presentation tonight.
Yeah.
If somebody will just email that to Shelley, we'll get it distributed.
also, if you have any cost estimates for how much it would cost to build, the current architectural designs of how the schools are now versus building it on a multi-level type design. That would be appreciated.
And I
It'll
appreciate that
give
too.
everybody
and
a visual.
I appreciate calling the two-story elementary at Fort Campbell. We could do some very good comparisons with our buildings compared to that one. I don't know about 4 stories. I thought it was 2 stories and a rooftop with, it's quite the building, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But we can do some good comparison between our cost per square foot and theirs.
Yeah, I think that'll be advantageous for
Yeah.
all the commissioners here to actually
That'll
get a
take a few
visual.
days, but we can do that once. We'll have to share some information with Fort Campbell.
And again, I want to say thank you to you guys. I hope you guys don't feel like, you're getting beat up, but these are concerns that we all have. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank y'all. Mr. Tyndall? Are you going to be brief?
I'll try. Do you want to take the break now or after this? I'd like to, 15 minutes, maybe 20, we can do this. Depends on the questions. And just a reminder, this is a presentation of the growth plan now, but we'll also be hearing Resolution 1912-9, which is also the same topic. So if there's questions now or questions later, we can address them. All right, I'm here to give a presentation on the final Montgomery County Clarksville Growth Plan for 2040. This was presented to the city. This is the brief that came out of the Clarksville Montgomery County Growth Coordinating Committee. The title of the plan is called A Strategy for Balanced Growth. Why do we have a growth plan? Bottom line is it was required by Tennessee back in 1998. Public Chapter 1101 was adopted by the state legislature. This is codified at TCA 658, 101 through 118. In essence, that's our roadmap on how you complete a growth plan, what's required, what should be in it, and who does it. It's required of all non-metro counties, so all but 3 counties in the state have to do this, and we enacted ours in 2000. January 1, 2000 is when it was adopted by the state. At the time, Tennessee was the 14th fastest growing state according to the 2000 census, and since then we've been the 9th greatest state in total number of new residents, 2016, 2017. Due to that rapid growth, the Tennessee legislature passed the Public Chapter 1101 in 1998 because of what they saw as unplanned growth leading to dire consequences. What the growth plan in essence does is it establishes the urban growth boundary, the planned growth area, and the rural area. You can see these maps in front of me. The rural area is out there in green. planned growth areas in blue, urban growth boundaries in red. I'll get to that a little later, but basically what that says is within those areas, different residential densities can be zoned for. And sometimes you'll hear during zoning cases that it's in the rural area or the planned growth area or urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary allows for all zoning classifications, including multifamily and cluster subdivisions. The planned growth area allows for the estate lots, which are your 35,000 or acre lots, plus it also allows for R1, which is down to 15,000 square foot lots if you have sewer. You're not likely to have sewer in the current horizon in the planned growth areas. There's some areas that may get it near the end of this plan. If you're on septic around here, you're probably looking at least 30,000 square feet to make the land perk based on where those blue areas are. And in the rural area, it's just agricultural zoning, so acre and a half lots or estate lots, which we come with occasionally for down to an acre property. Of the 92 counties that were required to have a growth plan, only 30 have amended them in the last 20 years, and only the 7 counties, including us, have done it since 2010. And we are the first county to overhaul this plan to look out to 2040. All the other plans looked out just to 2020 and are nearing the end of their life cycle. In fact, I would believe that the state legislature in the next several years may require counties to update those, and we'll be ahead of the curve when that comes along. History of our growth plan, as I mentioned, in 1999, we adopted it, sent it to this state. State adopted it in early 2000. It wasn't touched again until 2012 when the PGA 4, which is that area on this map east of the interstate, was modified with a text amendment to allow for multifamily dwellings, and that's why you've seen Rollo Lane and areas of Dunlop Lane develop the way they have in the last 7 years since 2012. There were also some updates given at the time. There were some projections from the original 1999 plan that didn't jive with what the 2010 census said, and those were updated. And then just last year, around this time, October of last year, there was again, another minor update to convert 600 acres of that planned growth area to urban growth boundary off Exit 8 to accommodate the city's purchase of the athletic lands. To date, approximately 500 of that 600 acres has annexed. Only 300 of that was the city's land. So how do you do a growth plan? You create the Montgomery County Growth Coordinating Committee. And in TCA, as I mentioned there, there's a stipulation on how certain counties develop their growth coordinating committee. We're in a unique position here where the state actually wrote us an exemption and said if the largest city is 70% or greater of your population and you have no other city of greater than 1,000 population, then the city planning department and the county or regional planning department are your growth coordinating committees. And since we are the Regional Planning Commission for both, we start with the planning commissioners as the baseline for the coordinating committee. At that point, the mayors of the city and the county can then jointly appoint additional members to that committee. And you'll see up top, we have 17 members representing 16 votes on our steering committee. Those are the 9 members of the RPC, 1 member from the Clarksville Department of Electricity, 1 from the Clarksville Montgomery County School System, 1 from the Clarksville Gas and Water, 1 from Cumberland Electric Membership Cooperative. They have 1 vote, but they had 2 representatives, 1 representing electric and 1 representing the recent broadband initiatives they have. 1 member from the Economic Development Council, 2 county residents, 1 representing agriculture and 1 representing large landowners. The mayors chose people. I reached out, and that was the board that was formed. At the same time, you'll notice we have what we call an ex officio committee. The state doesn't say you can or cannot do that. It just says you'll form a committee. And these were representatives that the mayors and myself felt are important to the development process, but maybe don't need to have a vote on the final plan or be offering amendments from the floor. The first 2 representatives are from Fort Campbell. Now, I will say the original plan was to have them as steering committee members, but then the JAGs got in the way and they said that federal representatives should not be voting on local matters. So they said, we can't vote, but we'll be happy to be part of the ex officio committee. And that's fine with us. Their input was still very valuable. This was 1 member from Public Works and 1 from Planning, Training, Mobilization, and Security, which is in charge of Sabre Field. We added an additional county commissioner, County Commissioner Joe Smith from District 3. We added an additional city councilwoman, representative from the Industrial Development Board, one representative from the County Home Builders Association, one representative from the Clarksville Association of Realtors, and then 3 local engineering offices that do the majority work in the county. The last 3 bullets there, those are pretty much the end users of the growth plan, and it was important to have their thoughts going forward, their vision, and have their buy-in, which it was a pretty smooth process all in all. So the state's very specific on your timeline. From the minute you have your kickoff meeting, you have 6 months to finish it and get it from the committee out to the city and the county. Our 6-month deadline was October 29th, and we had our final vote there, as you can see, meeting number 7 on October 25th. I would like to have had it on October 30th in conjunction with the RPC meeting, but we were a day short. So on March 14th was when that joint meeting of the mayors took place, and then our first meeting was technically on April 29th, where we introduced the plan. We kicked off the group, went over some concepts and background on why it was being done. And then at meetings 2 and 3, we had tables out there with copies of the map. We had a little introduction, PowerPoint, and discussion, and then the groups worked on individual tabletop exercises to draw lines, modify, ask questions. We had staff there. We had a lot of utilities there. On meeting 4 and meeting 5, I equated those to kind of speed dating. We asked all the utilities, the rural utilities from the community to come out on theme day, as well as gas and water. They actually sat at the table, and then our growth coordinating committee and ex officio members walked around and asked questions. And then same thing for theme day 2. We had the county highway, city street department actually also came out, public safety, meaning the sheriff, EMA, and county fire, and then the school system. So they all had a table as well, and were able to offer input on the growth plan as proposed at that time. There was very little change from meetings 5 till the end. More of the change was done in meetings 2, 3, and 4. We had 2 required public hearings on September 30th and October 1st. One was at Rossview Elementary School from 6 to 8 p.m. and then at Civic Hall the next night from 6 to 8 p.m. We had approximately 50 to 60 individuals show up from the community, including some of the elected officials from the city and the county. I thought that was pretty decent turnout for a plan kind of like this that always doesn't get the attention that it needs. So piggybacking on what the school system said, they mentioned that growth rate from the Regional Planning Commission. Well, I can't really claim it as ours. It's actually from the University of Tennessee Boyd Center for Economics. And again, going back to the TCA roadmap on how you do a growth plan, it says you will use University of Tennessee's estimates and population projections. So we're not allowed to deviate from that. I can't generate my own. I can't use the census population projections. We have to use the Tennessee projections. And they're done at a county level, county by county. So what we're looking at from 2019 to 2040 is a growth rate of approximately 40% and 90,455 new residents. You may remember a Leaf Chronicle article in February or so of last year of is Montgomery County ready for 90,000 new residents? That's where that number comes from. What this averages out to is a yearly increase of 4,307 from a low of 4,176 to a high of 4,625 and there in between. It's a very linear path, as you can see on that map. It doesn't curve up. It doesn't flatten out. It's very straight going forward. It's kind of indicative of if you took our current growth rate, added maybe 100 more homes a year to what we're currently doing, and doing that for the next 20 years. That's the path we're on. It's just every year being the same as this past year in terms of growth. For instance, we're looking at roughly 1,600 housing units annually will need to be constructed to accommodate these new residents, both in the city and the county combined. Right now, we're building about 1,400 units annually combined. That includes single family and multifamily units. So just a little faster than we're growing right now. That bottom paragraph is where the school system got that number. So if you take the 90,455 new residents and use the current student rate of 17.3% of all residents in this community utilize CMCSS schools, you're talking 15,648 new students through K to senior level in our school system. So that's where that number came from the University of Tennessee through us to the school system. So as I mentioned, the University of Tennessee population projections done at a county-wide level, so we had to extrapolate in this box here, what is the growth in the city, what is the growth in the county, because the city takes care of themselves within the city limits. There's no growth plan for the city limits. It's all about the urban growth boundary and how much land and development do we foresee in the county going forward from this point. Now, I will say that second bullet point there, the original 1999 growth plan projected 0.18 acres per person needed. We actually did much better at 0.12 acres. So we were using land much more wisely at a rate of almost 75% of what we projected we used. So hopefully we can keep that trend going and start using less acres per person, which means a little closer together, a little more dense, and some more multifamily thrown in will drive that number down and preserve land in the long run. Looking forward, and based off of our trends from the last 10 years, Clarksville is projected to account for 73% of the total growth for the next 20 years, and the city develops 2,778 acres or 11,700 lots, and the city actually develops at 0.09 acres per person, so they're even more dense than the overall county. The other areas of urban growth boundary and planned growth area has developed at 0.1 acres, so half the density that you see in the city. And what this basically, what we're trying to get down to is we know this much population, this many housing units, how many acres? And of those kind of acres, where are those acres? Are those acres in the city? Are they in the rural area? Are they in the urban growth boundary? Are they in the planned growth area? And I'll step you through how we looked at that. So we looked at a lot of 20-year data. This is going back, the chart you see on the left is the share on a 100% scale every year, how many permits were pulled in the city and the county. The county's in the dark green, the city's in the lighter green. The county's on top in that chart. Only 3 out of the last 25 years has the county exceeded the city in terms of single-family building permits. However, 2 of those 3 have been in the last 2 years. So the county is matching the city's current amount of permits developed. And that map on the lower right, you can see where those permits have been pulled. And it's on a parcel by parcel level. That's why you see things like Hancock and Google show up really bright. But you can see it's kind of smattered all around the county with a large proportion within the city limits and running out the interstate. This is a map of the cumulative density of building permits from the last 20 years, and you can start to see where areas show up. We kind of call it this crescent of growth, if you will. It's the areas you see in the hot red areas. This is Tiny Town, Trenton Road, Tylertown. That all developed in the last 10 years, and then it's been working its way east of the interstate down towards Sango. You can see, though, that a large majority of the building permit activity, at least in the intensity of it, has been in the city limits. So we took we have a great GIS guy, and we were taking a lot of opportunities to look at how has the land been utilized, what are the trends showing us, and then what's available out there to use. So we made this map, and this map took every developable piece of land remaining, and then we removed all the 7,751 preliminary and final subdivision lots that are already approved. So just to put that in perspective, we have 4 to 5 years of housing stock already approved in this community without having to approve another lot. They just have to build the subdivisions or build the houses that are in the subdivisions that are already on the ground. We also removed floodplains, wetlands, government-owned land, Industrial Development Board-owned land, and land with slopes greater than 15%. And of course, we removed anything that already has a structure on it. And you can see the land that's remaining in the dark blue is the most developable land we have left. So we're looking at pockets of woodlawn going out Dover Road as very large pockets of dark blue. You still have a tremendous amount of blue within the city limits. In fact, you could potentially fit the 90,000 new residents all within the city limits over the next 20 years. It is going to get crowded. Infrastructure will get taxed, but it is possible. And then you also have a large amount of land east of the interstate and working its way through Sango, also large tracts of land on that part of the county. As you can see, as you work your way down toward Fredonia, south of the river especially, and out toward Lylewood, those pieces of land really fragment, and that's due to the slopes, the streams, and wetlands out in those areas. So water and sewer are your drivers of density, And we looked at these maps, and it might not show great on that screen, but we have a lot of 10-inch water lines and 8-inch plus water lines that extend outside the county, especially to the east and to the south. And that's one of your primary drivers for growth. The next one is your sewer lines. With the growth of the industrial park, high-capacity force mains have been brought out east of the interstate, and this is a public utility that wants to sell capacity, has the capacity to service the growth out there, and that's coupled with the area that I just showed you that has the highest suitability for growth in terms of the land that's available, not as encumbered as other areas. So sewer in the Sango area, not as prevalent. It's some smaller lines, but it does run down 41A, as you can see there, with a 10-inch trunk line and could be expanded in the future. Just taking a break, and I'll show you the maps here in a second, since that's what it gets down to. We wanted to create a really comprehensive document, but also that one that was short enough and small enough that was digestible by everybody, not just the users of it, but the general public as well. So we created a 63-page document with text and maps. It's 88 total pages if you include the appendix. We put a lot of information in the back that support information and other information that might be of interest. But we have 7 chapters. The first is an executive summary. So if you just want to read the first chapter of the document, you'd have a pretty good sense of why we did it, how we did it, and what the outcome was. But if you go through it, chapter 2 is the more in-depth on why we did it, why Tennessee makes us do this, and the different steps we took. Chapter 3 is a series of 6 different guiding principles from what is smart growth, what is the definition of smart growth, and how can you apply that to future decisions, all the way to are we actually building the types of homes that we need for our community. Chapter 4 is the population projections and the analysis, the real meat of what I went through of how much land is left, how much land is going to be used, and how many homes are we looking at in each of those areas. Chapter 5 is the process. I went through all those meetings, and we recapped each meeting in a couple paragraph synopsis. And then chapter 6 is the actual breakdown of the growth areas, the boundaries of them, what zones you're allowed to zone in them, who's the service providers, and what the outlook is for those areas. Chapter 7 is a chapter I entitled Looking Forward. It's a 2-page chapter, but it lists about 5 or 6 key moments in our future where the growth plan may want to be looked at again. A major mobilization of Fort Campbell would really significantly change this community's character and maybe an opportunity to look at that. The completion of 374, a new interchange 6, opening up a new school campus in 20 or 15 years or so where one wasn't thought of when we were doing this plan would be an opportunity to update the plan. So there's that, and then as you can see in the appendix is a lot of the data that goes along with it. So this map right here, this is the 1999 through 2018 map, and you can see the planned growth areas in blue are very wide-reaching, and one of the areas that some opportunity was to look at what kind of development have we seen in the last 20 years and sort of redistribute it going forward. So I'll kind of march back and forth between these 2 maps for a second. There's the current map as proposed in the document. So we'll work from west to east. In the Woodlawn area, that planned growth area went all the way out to Lylewood Road. We have not seen much growth in that last mile or 2 out there over the last 20 years. Considering that, coupled with some of the situations going on with the water and sewer availability out there and the future extension of 374, the committee made a decision to draw back the planned growth area and the urban growth boundary down Dotsonville Road to a much more manageable area. In the same process, a portion just north of Purple Heart Parkway and west of Purple Heart Parkway was added to urban growth boundary. This was okay with the folks at Sabre Field because it still remains just outside the noise zones. But you can see there was a significant withdrawal of that planned growth area out there, and I'll get into those final numbers in a second. South of the river, what used to be called Planned Growth Area 2, another thing we did was we actually named all the planned growth areas because people don't ever remember if you're in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have Woodlawn, Cumberland Heights, East Montgomery, and South Guthrie. And Cumberland Heights did not change too much. A chunk of land was added south of the hilltop area where the services are out there, and some of the floodplains were pulled out of the developable area. Moving more toward the northeast at this time, You can see there's a big chunk of urban growth boundary north of Guthrie Highway and east of the Oakland Road area. Well, that's Google, and since the growth plan really addresses residential development, in talking with the IDB, there was not really a need to keep that in the urban growth boundary. It's not going to annex because of the interlocal agreement that's out there with the industrial park. So that was pulled to rural area, and the urban growth area was then pushed further south towards Guthrie Highway and across Guthrie International down to Alfred Toon Road. This is twofold. One, it opens up mixed use opportunities on Guthrie Highway with the multi-family development options in the county, but it also opens up annexation opportunities out there for future commercial or residential or industrial development along these corridors. A lot of the properties along International Boulevard, Steelstock Road, and others are not necessarily part of the interlocal agreement, and they may want to annex into the city for fire and police protection. Another decision that was made was all industrial land along International Boulevard pulled out of the planned growth area and put in rural area in order to avoid encroachment of residential development for at least, hopefully, 20 more years. Let the industrial park finish developing. We know with the struggle we had this past year with Atlas BX being approved, and we want to avoid those kind of opportunities in the future. Let the industrial park finish building out and then allow the homes to build up and let people move closer if they so desire. The big change out to the east, and I will make mention that South Guthrie did not change. Planned Growth Area 5, it's a small area served by the city of Guthrie for some water users out there. That did not change, but the Planned Growth Area 4, which is Rollo Lane, Dunlop Lane, Rossview Road, which was there as Planned Growth Area 4, was converted to an urban growth boundary. As you might have heard me say earlier, it already operates as an urban growth boundary by name. It allows for multifamily development, cluster subdivisions, all those rules, but it does not allow for annexation, and it doesn't operate by its true intent. I truly believe by changing those, the language in Planned Growth Area 4 is kind of skirting what should have been done, which was call it an urban growth boundary. So that's what was done by the committee, and they pushed it from what was Kirkwood Road to, I believe, Buck Road out there, and take some land to the south on Guthrie Highway. Again, it's just urban growth boundary. We'll probably call it urban growth boundary east for data purposes, but it's urban growth boundary. And then moving forward to the south, the area around Sango hasn't changed too much. Portions to the east have reduced and become actually from urban growth boundary to planned growth area. This is based on long-term availability of sewer, but the sewer has run down 41A, and working with East Montgomery Utility, a very positive relationship between them and gas and water, the developable land, and with 41A now being a 5-lane road for a large portion of that, pushed the urban growth boundary further south. We obviously do see a lot of our citizens commuting from this area. That's an area where the road can handle the capacity. The schools have capacity down there at the elementary level, and it's a good area for growth. As we look toward the south of that area, more toward Fredonia, south of Albright Road, that area, some of the planned growth area was converted to rural area, some urban growth boundary was converted to planned growth area, and so on. So overall, a reduction in that area of urban growth boundary, the big area being Grattan Road, Goulson Road, pulled out of the urban growth boundary. There's limestone out there. The likelihood of getting sewer out there is very low. It would be a very high cost. And honestly, the city fire department doesn't really want to develop out that direction anymore. They would probably have to build another station at some point to service it, because that comes from down on the bypass, that station, and it's getting kind of far out there. They just annexed a little bit of property off Grattan Road just this past year, and that was the recommendation of the chief, was this should be the last big piece property. So those considerations went into account, and the committee took that into their considerations. So before you tonight is a resolution 1912-9. The city approved it last month at their meeting. It's a very unique resolution, and Tim Harvey can get into this in a little bit if he needs to, but it's actually needs to be a negative 2/3 vote to send it back to the committee. Failure to do that is sending it on to the state. Once the resolution's signed, I will send this on to the state local government planning advisory committee, and they'll have their meeting in January. After they vote on it, it becomes law. So that's on January 4th, I believe. It's a Wednesday. I'll go down and attend that meeting and answer any of that committee's questions if it passes this month or next month. Mayor, I'll be happy to take questions now or hold them off till the resolution phase.
Go now. Any questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. I know you don't get to go far. Next on our agenda are our one zoning resolution, CZ 18, 2019, application of William Kupsky from E1 to AG. Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our only zoning case tonight. This is 12.05 acres, currently zoned E1, requesting to go back to Ag. It is an extension of the zoning classification. It's a tract of land located at the terminus of Marquis Drive, fronting on the south frontage of Marquis Drive, part of the Marquis Estates subdivision of a similar name. The majority of the E1 you see surrounded by this is, especially to the west, the Marquis Estates subdivision. There's a few large lots left to the east, which they gave up on future development on this. The property owner who lives in Marquis Estates and backs up to this property is requesting this. It adjoins his property, and his request is to reduce the property line setbacks so that he can have a barn and have agricultural equipment and, in essence, farm this property. This is at the end of that one section of Marquis Estates. It's a kind of rolling property. You can make out a TVA tower right in the middle of it, so a large portion of it is encumbered with TVA, but you can still do ag on that property. There's those lines. In fact, the neighboring property already has a barn on it to the north. And this is the owner's property out there from another cul-de-sac looking back at the property, leaving that house and the properties behind this. It's a lot of large lots out there, and he indicated that he did talk to his neighbors with regards to this. We did not receive any other comments or concerns from other city or county departments. The impact is proposed minimal. It's on septic. It's in the Sango planning area. Staff recommends approval because the zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan, and the ag zoning request is not out of character with the surrounding properties. The Planning Commission also voted for approval.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? At this time, we'll go into public hearing before we call anybody to the podium. Just remind all of our speakers that you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. If you would, please give us your name and address. And at this time, we'll call on anyone in the audience to speak on behalf of CZ 18, 2019. Anyone to speak on behalf of CZ? Here we go.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is William Kupsky. I live at 317 Brigg Drive. I am the applicant for the rezoning. And as was indicated, the primary reason is so I can go ahead and build a barn on the property to allow storage of agricultural equipment and do some hobby farming on it. The land itself is 12 acres. However, it's kind of deceptive when you think of it as a 12-acre property not being able to build a barn. Under the E1 zoning, the setback is 200 feet from any property line. The widest section of the property, because of its long shape, is 398 feet. So by going to agricultural, that reduces the setback to 50 feet, which would allow me to put up a pole barn. So I'll be here to answer any questions if you have any on this. So.
Any questions of Mr. Kupsky? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the audience speak on behalf of CZ 18, 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition to CZ 18, 2019? All right, we'll now close the public hearing. Now we'll go into our resolutions. Our first resolution is 19-12-1, resolution to accept the federal grant funds from the Bureau of Justice Assistance State Criminal Alien Assistance Program. Any questions regarding 19-12-1? 19-12-2, resolution to amend the budget to accept joint grant Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Leverett. 1912-1.
I was going to ask the sheriff to ask a question, but it looks like he slipped out. Is the chief here?
There's chiefs
Okay.
here, chief deputies here.
Hey, Chief, I looked at this resolution, I looked up the company Justice Benefits, Inc., and I wasn't really clear on exactly what they do. Can you just give us a brief synopsis, because couldn't find much information on them?
They are a benefits administrator for the Department of Justice. They exist to administer these grants. They monitor, they collect the information, they do all the paperwork. It's a sole source administrator for these grants here, which it's not something we can go and get ourselves. Justice Benefits, Inc. is the organization that handles all that.
Do you know by any chance how are they funded?
They are funded through part of this SCAP grant funds. If you notice in the resolution, the amount, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but
It's about 30-something
the
thousand.
amount for the contracted services, that 18%,
Yes.
that's the money that they retain for their organization. And it's not just Montgomery County, it's the sole benefits administrator for that grant.
Okay, and so,
Nationwide.
they're providing for us, Montgomery County, let me go back to the resolution. Is it just medical, or is it, I saw medical and I saw food. What else?
Okay, so what the money is for is to offset, it was originally designed to offset the expense to local jails for housing certain inmates. So we are able to take this money and apply it directly to our operation, to anything that directly benefits an inmate. We sometimes provide prisoner clothing. There's a change in the law that requires us to provide certain personal items, hygiene items and whatnot, that they offset that. So in addition to what you see under miscellaneous supply, materials and supplies, the amount for the food service equipment, there are some items that we needed for the kitchen and some medical equipment that were cut out of the budget. And we have this money, we're able to go back and pick up some of that stuff. So that's what the equipment is. It's some medical supply equipment and some food service equipment, and the other supplies and materials or any other things that comes up. But it has to be spent on inmates.
Okay. I think I'm clear now. Thank you.
And I can forward you some more information on the SCAP program, its origins, if you like it.
Yes, I'd appreciate that. It was a little difficult when I was trying to look it up.
Understood.
Commissioner Gannon?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a match?
No match.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions regarding 1912-1? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
1912-2, resolution to amend the budget to accept joint grant funds from the Bureau of Justice Assistance from the United States Department of Justice. Any questions on 1912-2? Commissioner Gannon?
Yes, sir. I assume there's no match on this one as well.
No match.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Resolution 1912-3, resolution to adopt an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County for joint funding from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, JAG, the United States Department of Justice on a joint award of federal burn justice assistance grant funds. Any questions related to 1912-3? Commissioner Gannon?
Same question.
This is the resolution, this is an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County that is required for the distribution of that grant. Is
For the
that-
grant before it?
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. That's what I thought.
Any other questions? Resolution 1912-4, resolution adopting the policy of disabled veteran leave entitlement. Any questions? Resolution 1912-5, resolution permitting a nonprofit agency to place engraved brick pavers in a designated location at the Montgomery County Historic Courthouse. Commissioners, you have all this information, but this is an area that's out around the cannon, that round Plaza area that the Rotary clubs would like to sell bricks around. They donated that cannon to Montgomery County. I know Miss Cheryl Moss is here, and she can answer any questions about it. But typically, the bricks around the courthouse, we sell those for $50, and I think it cost us $42 to get them here. And so we don't make any money. That money goes to the general fund. The Rotarians approached me about doing this one area out here to maybe be a fundraiser for their club, and I thought it was a great idea, as much as they've done for Montgomery County. So any questions regarding 1912-5? 1912-6 is a resolution amending the budget of the Montgomery County Engineering Department for an additional architect or engineer. Any questions regarding that? Resolution 1912-7 is a resolution amending the budget of the Montgomery County Archives Department for additional equipment and staffing using archives reserve funds. These are reserve dollars. They're not new dollars. Any questions regarding 1912-7? 1912-8 is a resolution to amend the budgets of various funds for fiscal year 2020 in certain areas of revenues and expenditures. Any questions there? Jeff, mainly this is just some grant proceeds going into the budget and et cetera. Did I miss what? No, I don't think I missed one. If you think you were napping. These are just grant funds mainly that are being added to the budget. Any questions regarding 1912-8?
Well, these are mostly the pay study plan, just reappropriating those funds into the proper accounts. There's a couple of carry forwards as far as some grants, SCAP grant, and one more grant, I can't remember off the top of my head, and then about $3,900 for some equipment over at one of the courtrooms.
Any questions? 1912-9, resolution by the Montgomery County, Tennessee Commission ratifying the Clarksville-Montgomery County 2040 Growth Plan and forwarding it to the Tennessee Local Government Planning Advisory Committee for consideration. Any questions regarding 1912-9? Mr. Harvey, if you would you explain that 2/3, whatever Jeff talked about, just so the commission will know about it?
I will. This is a default resolution. The growth plan has been properly passed, and you've heard about it. Unless you reject it by a 2/3 vote, it will go into effect. So it's kind of a negative vote. I'll look at the resolution, but you'll be given a charge at the time that if 2/3 of you vote no, then it will be rejected, and the group that does the growth study will then be required to try to reconcile that, go through a mediation process with you. So the vote will be, as it's couched now, it will be yes or no, but if it's 2/3 negative, then it will be rejected.
1912-10, it's a resolution of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriating funds for the construction of a 12-classroom addition at Rossview Elementary School. Any questions regarding 1912-10? 1912-11 is a resolution of Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriating funds for New Providence Elementary School. Any questions? Resolution 1912-12, resolution of Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriating funds for the purchase of Emmanuel Family Life Center for CMCSS Language Immersion Program. Any questions, Commissioner Knight?
I'm under the impression that there's several organizations at that particular location that have not been given proper provisions to leave prior to us doing anything. And I'd like to know if any provisions have been made for those organizations, one of which is a school for special needs children, as well as another organization, which is a satellite school for Fisk University, if I'm correct.
Correct. There are actually three different organizations that currently have leases, one in particular that's longer than the other. I heard about it most recently, the leases, and chose to reach out, especially to the Academy for Academic Excellence, which we've had some great conversations in reference to what it looks like, and we feel very good about, the future in terms of that program. We've had some great conversations with the administration at the church to ensure that they are left in a good place. The last thing I would want is to be seen as, the large school district that figured out a way to had a school to land, outside of its building, and that's definitely not what we want to happen. I've had additional conversations with them today, before the break, and those conversations have gone very well.
Well, I'm probably going to recommend to the commission to have this deferred to about, January 6th or January 13th commission meeting, to give that appropriate time to provide those provisions to those organizations, because we don't want to put those kids, and that school at a disadvantage.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We don't want to put those kids in that school at a disadvantage to where, no deal is in place or no plan is in place to ensure that they're taken care of.
So to share with you the details, since you need some details, we've indicated that they would be more than happy, we would be more than happy for them to stay in the building for the duration of the school year. They have acquiesced and indicated that that would be great. They have also, we've also worked with the administration at the church, because there are 10 classrooms in the building about 30 yards from the Emmanuel Center. And they're making plans for them to move into that facility. We've even gone as far as indicating to the school that we would move them into those classrooms once that building is sprinkled and in educational occupancy. So there have been some detailed conversations that show that we're doing what's necessary to ensure that we're a good partner, and want to make sure that they're, in a good place as well.
I appreciate your efforts.
Yep.
Do we have that in writing, just to make sure that they...
Today, they met with their attorneys, and we should have that in writing tomorrow.
Okay, sounds great.
Yep.
Commissioner Ray?
Dr. House, do we have an appraisal on that building?
We actually are ordering one ourselves. There was one that was about 2 years old, but we couldn't get our hands on it. We requested, and they wouldn't provide it to us. Excuse me. So we're ordering our own.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Beal?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Ray just asked one of my questions, so I appreciate that. My other question is, how many students are we looking at that will eventually be at this facility?
So you're talking about one classroom, or one class of students is about 40 kids. So you're talking about 40 at the kindergarten level, 40 at the first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade. So doing the math, 200 and some odd, 16 classrooms in that facility. We would need at least, I believe, about 14 to house the school effectively. But the 16 would give us some room to have some specialty things that would help as well.
And are these students going to be pulled from specific schools, or how is that?
The school is actually in existence already. It's a school within a school. It's the language immersion program, and it's at Barksdale, and that's one of the reasons why Barksdale is busting out of the seams. The program has gained a lot of momentum very fast. We have a waiting list, and we're pulling kids from every zone of the county. We actually save spots for the school out of each zone so that we can have a strong representation from every area of the city.
And there will be sufficient transportation to accommodate all that?
That's
also?
something that we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Tangi Smith?
Good afternoon, Dr. House. Commissioner Rasnick and myself went to look at the Emmanuel Life Center, and as we were leaving, we were talking to some parents that were actually picking up their children, and that's when we found out that the other school was there and that it was an autistic school for autistic children. And that was one of their biggest concerns, were moving, not just staying until the school year, but because they had already moved already within the year, that moving those kids and the emotional effects that that would have on the kids. So you kind of answered my question, so I thank you for that. And it's good to know that if they do have to move, they'll only be moving a couple of feet into the school, so.
And there are a total of, I think, 40 students in the
Yes.
school right now. But like I said, we've worked with them very closely over the last, I've worked with them personally over the course of the last 2 weeks, because they heard when we heard.
Right.
So we're going to do everything possible to ensure that they land on their feet in a good place.
Right, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. House, are any of those leases, or do they all expire at different times? I mean, there's not a lease there for 3 years, is it?
No, the Academic Academy for Excellence is an October to October lease. And I'm not really sure about the Fisk, but it's my understanding that either Fisk or the one church, I believe it is, are maybe month-to-month leases.
And I guess my question's
I'm
kind
not
of...
certain about those two, though.
It's related to what the questions that are being asked, and I really respect the commissioner's thoughts about the people or the kids or whomever that are there now. But did I understand you to say that one of the schools will continue to stay in that building?
Correct. For the remainder of this school year, that was their fear.
Okay, just for the school year?
For the remainder of this school year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions regarding 1912-12? All right, thank you, Mr. House.
Sure.
1912-13. If you'll let me get back to my agenda page. Resolution of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriating funds for design fees for 12 classroom addition to West Creek Elementary School. Any questions regarding 1912-13, Commissioner Knight?
For West Creek, that one's near and dear to my heart, so I just want to make sure, is that going to help eliminate the portables that's there at West Creek right now? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Resolution 1912-14, resolution of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners appropriating funds for design fees for 12 classroom addition to Oakland Elementary School. Any questions? Commissioners, resolutions 1210 through 1214. What's the total funding on that, Jeff? Do you know off the top of it? About $8 million? About $8.8 million. I'm surprised we didn't have any questions. We will fund that out of the wheel. Some of that will be funded out of the wheel tax reserve, but as you'll notice in each of the resolutions, they all have refunding language in it. And so the balance of that will come out of the general fund balance. And then when we do the middle school, we will repay ourselves back to the fund balance. Resolution 1912-15 is a resolution to request court to rescind its prior order on the sale of certain real estate property at the 2019 Montgomery County tax sale. Any questions? Resolution 1912-16, resolution to provide funding to Austin Peay State University Foundation. Any questions? Commissioner Beal.
Mayor, can you give us a brief explanation of exactly what this would be for?
Austin Peay put in a bid to host a playoff game, and this money would go towards that effort to the NCAA for them to host the playoff game.
Do they need this money to make that happen?
Typically, those dollars are not budgeted through the state, and so yes, they do need them.
So this would be a donation, a contribution to a nonprofit?
It would be, but I think because the conduit that they have to use, if we donated it directly to Austin Peay, it would go in their general fund, and then the state could redirect those funds as the state saw fit.
Okay.
Where it goes to the foundation, it's really just a conduit for things that come up like this.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Leverett.
Commissioner Bill actually asked my question. When I'm looking at the language says tax exempt 501c3. And I know that some of my fellow commissioners had concerns about taxpayer dollars being used for tax exempt and nonprofit organizations and things like that. So I was just trying to get clarity on that because I didn't want anyone to be conflicted in this resolution. Also, if Austin P does not get this bid, am I to understand the language saying that we will not distribute these funds if they do not win the bid?
Austin P actually got the bid.
They did get the
The
bid.
timing of it is because they were asked to submit a bid not this past Sunday, but Sunday before last. We weren't going to have a call commission meeting for that, and so that's why it's on our agenda tonight.
Okay, but just to keep in mind that this is a tax exempt organization. Thank you.
Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. The city is also help funding the playoff game?
I'm not sure if they are or not. It's my understanding there was something in the paper or the media that said who was funding it, but I don't remember. I've been out of pocket, so I don't know what it said. I don't know if the city's funding it or not. I can't answer that. Any other questions regarding 1912-6? Under new business, this will require a motion to suspend the rules. If somebody would duly move to suspend the rules, Commissioner Harper, second, Commissioner Garland Johnson. 1912-7 is a resolution amending budget of Montgomery County government to provide funding in amount not to exceed $21,120 to the Clarksville Economic Development Council for the purpose of a community advertising campaign. Commissioners, this is all related to Clarksville being voted the best city in the United States. It's a three-party agreement between the city of Clarksville, the ECD, and Montgomery County, and it's to create an not necessarily a campaign, but a specific brand that each one of the entities will use in their own message, but it'll be the same brand. So there's not somebody putting this out, somebody putting that out, and somebody putting that out, and they all look different. Be happy to answer any questions. Resolution, under old business, unfinished, this was deferred from November. 1911-2, resolution to request return and conveyance of surplus property from the Clarksville Montgomery County school system to Montgomery County. Any questions? Commissioner Knight.
Is this the resolution to reacquire the Kirkwood complex?
This is asking the school system to convey that property back to Montgomery County.
I mean, okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding 1911-2? Under our reports, nominating committee nominations, Chairman Gannon, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. The nominating committee met today at 5:30, and we will enter the following in at the next meeting as a motion. The Audit Committee, which is a 2-year term, Commissioner Joe Smith has been filling an unexpired term of Audrey Tooley and is eligible to be reappointed for a 2-year term to expire December of 2021. Commissioner Lisa Pritchard has been filling an unexpired term of Monroe Gittersleeve and is eligible for reappointment for a 2-year term to expire December 2021. Commissioner Chris Resnick is nominated to replace Commissioner Arnold Hodges for a 2-year term to expire December of 2021. Commissioner Joe Creek is nominated to replace Commissioner David Harper for a 2-year term to expire December of 2021. Commissioner John Gannon is nominated to replace Commissioner Brandon Butts for a 2-year term to expire December of 2021. The next one is on the Health, Education, and Housing Facility Board. If you recall, last month we nominated Leo Milan for the Industrial Development Board. This is in correlation with that and was accidentally left off. So this will be to fulfill the other part of that. That in the Health, Education, and Housing Facility Board, Leo Milan is nominated to fill an unexpired term of James Corlew to expire June of 2023. And we will enter all those in as a motion at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gannon. Under County Mayor nominations, Regional Planning Commission, Tom Spigner nominated to replace Russell Atkins for a 4-year term to expire December 31, 2023. Public Building Authority, Rex Hawkins nominated to replace Bobby Powers for a 6-year term to expire December 2025. And Jay Albertia nominated to replace Steve Kimmer for a 6-year term to expire December 2025. Under Community Corrections, Brian Reeves, probation officer, nominated to fill the unexpired term of Debbie Vance with a term to expire November 2021. Ryan Domney, parole officer, nominated to fill unexpired term of Ann Kroger, term expiring November 2022. And Alicia Sharpton, nonprofit, Robertson County, nominated to fill the unexpired term of Michael Williams with a term to expire November 2021. And under county mayor appointments, Frank Lott, appointed to fill the unexpired term of Melissa Miller with a term to expire April 2023. And those are the county mayor nominations and appointments. You'll see under Commissioner Harper.
Mayor.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Commissioner Hodges and Commissioner Butts for their 2 years of service on the audit committee along with me. I appreciate their work. They've done a lot. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for your service as well. Commissioner Gannon?
Yes, sir. On that last one you read, that's not on our agenda, just FYI.
Public Records
No,
Commission?
the one before that one.
Community Corrections?
Yes, sir.
Well,
It's just FYI.
it's on mine.
It's not on ours. Doesn't matter. You can put it on there for next time.
Okay. Wow. We'll figure out what happened. How's that? Under your reports filed, you'll see the reports that are listed. I'm sure we'll have some new ones. Do we need, does the security court report need to be read, Shelley? Okay. Okay. And it is presented to you. Under our announcements, I want to thank Mr. Jeff Tyndall. Jeff, you and the entire growth committee, I guess that's what you call them, y'all did a tremendous amount of work in a very short period of time. You and your staff are to be commended for leading that charge, and we just want to say thank you and job well done. Just a reminder that the Clarksville Christmas parades this Saturday at 5 p.m. The county will have a float entry. Commissioners, you and your family are invited to ride. We just need to let Shelley know if you plan to participate. We'd hate for the parade to take off and leave you behind. So Commissioner Arnold Hodges, be there on time. And lastly, if you would, please keep our circuit court clerk, Cheryl Castle, in your prayers. Cheryl lost her mom last week. I know it's a very difficult time for her, and so just ask that you keep her in your prayers. With no other business, we're adjourned. Thank you.